It is Friday, August 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another Sword of the Sea episode of LTPS. As always, let's begin with our PS Plus reminder. The monthly games are still live on PSN, and also PS Plus Extra and Premium. The August lineup is now live on PSN as well, with a bonus game thrown in last minute. So not only do we have Sword of the Sea launching day one into PS Plus Extra, but we also have the Rogue Prince of Persia as well. So that one shadow dropped right into PS Plus Extra, which is it's that roguelike platform Prince of Persia game that was in early access for about a year from the studio Evil Empire under Ubisoft. That game is now available on PS Plus Extra as well. Only played a little bit, but so far the loop there is actually quite good, a little bit engaging. It hasn't quite hooked me, but it is a very good roguelike game from what I've played so far. There's that. Also, we should mention that as we were expecting, the Resident Evil 2 and 3 games, the PS1 emulated classics on PSN, no trophies. So like the other Capcom games, there are no trophies so far. Who knows if they'll eventually pay for that additional add-on later down the road, and plus it can go back to those games and add some trophy lists, which I would like to see. But we can safely say they are available to buy a la carte, so you don't have to have a premium membership to at least buy and play those games. Now, because the new lineup is live on PSN, that also means we now have some games that will exit the game catalog in about a month's time. So 8 titles in total are leaving Extra and Premium, which this time around, a lot of good games that are going to be exiting. So The Plucky Squire, which was, actually didn't review nearly as well as I thought it would, but still a very charismatic, colorful looking, different kind of game. Night in the Woods, I might be more partial because it's like got animals in it and the protagonist is a cat, but it's very cozy with the storytelling it's trying to do, so I really enjoyed that game. Road 96, also a lot of fun. Fist Forged and Shadow Torch is a China Hero Project game that came out fairly early in the program. That one's quite good. Dragon's Crown, also very fun from the PS3 Vita days and early PS4 cycle. And then Premium is also losing Pistol Whip for PSVR 2. So yet again, another PSVR 2 game leaving. I think there's only like 3 or 4 games that are available on Premium now for that particular benefit. So PSVR 2 owners are not really having much on offer here anymore. That was quite a short-lived benefit for Premium members. But those games are leaving in about a month, so get your playtime in on those games. Now, getting into our first main news story here, and it's quite a big one, which is PS5 prices going up in the US. It is finally confirmed over on the PlayStation blog. Sony says, and I quote, "Similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment. As a result, we've made the difficult decision to increase the recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US." So across the board, all consoles going up $50. That means the disc console is now $550, digital edition is $500, and even the PS5 Pro going up to $750, an eye-watering price tag. Now, if you recall, back in May, Sony did say they had a 3-month stockpile of consoles in the US, so they were always being very mindful of this and trying to navigate the tariff situation, which was completely rocky and uncertain, and they were always changing the percentages, and that's still going on in the here and now. But they were the last major holdout here, at least as far as the existing consoles. I mean, now I think, most notably, a lot of people are looking at Nintendo Switch 2, because in that context, Nintendo just launched that machine, and they've got a very important holiday season coming up for what is a brand new platform launch and trying to scale up their install base. So everyone's sort of looking at that now thinking, what is Nintendo going to do? Because they don't want that to be super cost prohibitive. So that's really the other angle to consider. But for the sort of existing platforms that are out there right now, everything went up. Sony was really holding out on PS5 in what was a very important marketplace, because the other obvious context here, or the elephant in the room, is that all other marketplaces or major markets, Sony did increase the price for PlayStation 5, which arguably was all these other regions taking the brunt of it in order to make sure that PS5 can go a little bit further in the US with its existing price tag, which definitely sucks. But if you remember from the, 2 weeks ago now at this point, the most recent financial report, the Games and Network Services division did revise their tariff impact, and all of the Sony group revised it downwards as far as the tariff impact. But they've also said that they are diversifying production locations for their main products. They've actually completed that, and accessories are expected to be completed by the first half of this fiscal year. So even though accessories are staying the same price for the time being, you would hope they can also keep that the same price, although maybe not. I mean, that's the other issue, is that we're still in very uncertain times. Thankfully, Sony was only able to get away with a $50 something price increase, which sucks. And I hate that I would have to phrase it that way. Ideally, I would like these things to stay as cheap as they possibly can. And it would also be great if consoles went back to the sort of marketplace where they historically go down in price. But ironically, that's the complete opposite of where we are right now. Not even so much sourcing the chips for these consoles, which is why we have not seen them go down in price anymore, but they're going up because of the current tariff impact and the economic environment that we're in right now. And what's so insane is that really it seems like the best time to buy a PlayStation 5 would have been, what was that, late or last holiday season, right? It was disc consoles going for $375, which was insane. And then digital editions were $350, and that would have also been the slim consoles, so you could, in theory, add a disc drive later. Really not a bad time at all to buy a PlayStation 5, but unfortunately, that is where we are right now. I sincerely hope we don't see another price increase, but it is also a distinct possibility that will end up happening. Now, as far as the Sony numbers and how it works out, Sony's not going to disclose all this, but again, the sort of brief recap here is that PS5 Pro has, as far as we know, that thing was probably always pretty profitable, and Sony wants to protect that margin, so that's why that console is seeing a $50 price increase, because they want it to stay profitable. The digital edition was always losing money. I don't think that console ever made money, and that's why it initially saw a $50 price increase, and now going up again $50. The disc console was profitable. I'm not sure if that was always the case. Well, initially at launch it wasn't. It became profitable a little bit shortly after. Then I think it went underwater again, and so that $50 might be able to protect it and get it a little bit back in the green there. But otherwise, that's where we are right now. It sucks, and I hope we don't see more price increases. Moving on to another major news story here, a big shakeup going on at Bungie, where it's been confirmed that the CEO, Pete Parsons, after 23 years, is stepping down and leaving the company. Justin Truman will be taking his place. This was confirmed on Bungie's site. Previously, Justin has been a leader in engineering, production, design, and recently he was the GM for Destiny 2 and the Chief Development Officer. So he will be taking over. It seems like this is effective immediately. And that's actually all we know. There's no extra report here as far as giving us some underlying context of what this transition means or how it happened, why it happened. And we're saying all this because there is, an elephant in the room here, which is the recent year or so of complaints and grievances being aired out from former and existing Bungie staff under anonymity about Pete Parsons and the Bungie leadership and how they are steering the ship of Bungie and all the issues and turmoil going on at the company, which does closely tie into how PlayStation acquired the team and all the issues that they were sort of now realizing Bungie had, tying in back-end office operations, and now in the most recent report confirmed that they are being absorbed into PlayStation Studios, with that whole contingency initially from the acquisition being that some members from SIE would go on to Bungie's board of directors, and there would be a plan in place of if you're not meeting certain financial milestones, you will lose that independence and come into SIE properly, and that is pretty much happening right now. So I would think that there is a distinct possibility of maybe SIE cleaning up shop to a degree. I don't know. I mean, it's always something where I like to remind people, anybody that is leaving a company after 20-something years, that could always be a very simple explanation of it's 20-something years, they're ready to move on, it's very amicable. But it's hard to not think that, oh, maybe this is also a you've been around long enough kind of deal, and now we're taking over the corporation, you're being absorbed and you're losing your independence, and we're going to give you an option here. You can either leave amicably or perhaps it's going to get ugly and we have to sort of kick you out, right? Giving them that sort of option to leave on their own accord. So whatever the case is, though, if we end up getting a report about that, that would be great. But for the time being, I would just say that I would think this is actually quite good news. And for a lot of people following Bungie as of late, I mean, I think that's kind of the consensus right now, is that it might seem a little weird to be celebrating a situation of Bungie being absorbed into a bigger corporation, but there's just been so many complaints about Bungie leadership and the studio culture and a lot of the core staff at Bungie wanting to pitch certain ideas, maybe go back to a single player game. And if all these reports are true that, leadership just keeps shooting that down, they want to stick to live service, perhaps this does illustrate a brighter future for Bungie under PS Studios, where they wanted to bring in new leadership, foster a new studio culture, and perhaps that will lead to bigger and better things for Bungie. I would hope that is what's going to happen. In other PlayStation business news, SI has sold off their stake of Evo to Nodwin Gaming. And this is kind of a weird thing that's going on here. So basically, if you remember, in 2021, SI acquired joint ownership of Evo with RTS, and now they've sold their shares to Nodwin Gaming, which is a company that the Sony Group has a minority stake in. And now SI is going to be a sponsor of Evo through 2028. So SI is now a sponsor, not an owner, but the Sony Group has a vested interest in Nodwin Gaming, which is who they sold the shares to. So it's kind of a roundabout way that this played out, and I'm not necessarily sure if this is a good or bad thing outside of just shuffling funds, perhaps just seeing a return with Evo's slight growth over the previous years, and then maybe there's a conflict of interest if SI is really that mindful of, or SI and the Sony Group being mindful of wanting to have the event look a certain way with possibly other fighters coming back into Evo, and which a lot of that is easily centered around like Smash Brothers, and I don't know enough about that to even humor the idea of if that game and franchise would come back to Evo or not. But considering Sony has their own fighter that they'll be releasing next year, maybe it would look a certain way if SI is directly owning a portion of that event. So I don't know. I'm not sure I really understand the fighting game community that much to really say what this truly means outside of businesses being businesses and moving money around, and it just maybe looks a certain type of way when it's more of a sponsorship role and not necessarily one where Sony is, directly owning and operating it and sort of pushing an agenda on the fighting game community, right? Which is having to strictly use PS5 consoles and things like that. So I don't know. We'll see how this plays out over time, but that is something that happened just yesterday. All right, let's move on to some game news here, starting off with Helldivers 2 and the Halo ODST collab, which is now confirmed, coming out the same day as the Xbox version, kind of expected, and that's going to have a new warbond for 1,500 super credits. That's going to include the MA5C assault rifle, the M6C pistol, M90A shotgun, M7S SMG, A9 Helljumper armor set, and the A35 Recon armor set as well. Plus, there's a ton of new capes, abilities, banners, player titles, etc., things like that. Now, I don't think anybody thought, oh, this is the way we finally get Halo on PlayStation, because technically speaking, this is the first time Halo would ever appear on PlayStation in some way, shape, or form, capacity. Although I guess if you want to be hyper technical, the Halo series that you could stream on PlayStation 5 consoles, but I think you get my point. Gaming content, this is not really what I think anybody really saw coming, but it's really more a matter of time because this is cool to see, right? It's neat to have that kind of collab. That's where we are nowadays as far as cross-platform collaborations and things, and seeing multi-platform games ship and all this, that, and the fourth, right? But really, it's now a matter of when will we see Halo proper launch on PlayStation. This is perhaps just the little tipping point where eventually we'll see some kind of Halo game, which one, we don't know, but see it eventually ship on PlayStation 5. Next up, we have a new trailer for Lost Soul Aside ahead of its August 29th release. So again, the game is coming out very soon, but this trailer shows off all the different combat abilities in the game, and it also showcases simply how flashy and really over the top the combat does look, which I'm praying that's not necessarily something where it's trying to overcompensate for, maybe a gameplay hook that doesn't quite feel as good as it does appear to be, but it is very flashy, a lot of insane particle effects. The game does look gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but it's still something where, it's hard to judge until you're actually sitting there playing the game, but it does still look quite nice. So that's still open for debate as far as how good the game is, but we will find out very soon once the game finally comes out from its quite lengthy development cycle. Now, another somewhat high-profile game coming out of China, which is also a PS5 console exclusive, is Where Winds Meet, and this one too got a recent trailer. This one, the very important release date trailer. So the game is coming out November 14th this year, and as a reminder, it's an open-world action-adventure RPG. So this one also is not that far behind. It looks good, but it's sort of what I was getting at before. A lot of these games are starting to feel maybe a little samey and lost in the sauce, but that could also be chalked up to not necessarily just a lot of games we're seeing out of China, and that does play a part of it, I think, but really just how many games we do get nowadays. we'll probably get into this for the Gamescom Opening Night Live portion, but it's a matter of like just how many things are coming out nowadays, and it's really tough to, I think, to stand out and a game to sort of have that reveal trailer announcement, trailer a year later, another one a year later, and for it to really make a name for itself and stand out across all the other titles that are coming out nowadays. I mean, next month has a ton of game releases, and then October is no different as well. It seems like everything's trying to come out for that important holiday season, but there is simply a saturation going on in games. You could play 9 out of 10s all day, every day, and never run out of things to play. It's kind of insane nowadays. So where winds meet, it'll be interesting to see where this game lands critically. Moving on to Square Enix and Triangle Strategy, because this game recently launched on PlayStation 5. A complete shadow drop out of nowhere, so it's great to have this on here because it was previously a Switch and PC exclusive, so it's now out on PlayStation 5. I would think that a physical release is not going to be too far behind for this one as well, so it is purely digital right now, but great to see this one as another HD 2D game launching on PlayStation 5. I played, I think, 10-ish hours on Switch, which I'm not much of a top-down strategy type, but this one was, I don't know, it was just calling to me at the time. I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a shot, even though I'm not usually a fan of the genre, and I did enjoy the 10 or so hours that I did play, but that's my problem with a lot of Switch stuff nowadays, is that I'll start something and I just never finish them, so perhaps I'll pick it up again on PlayStation 5 at some point and see it all the way through, but it's also a very gorgeous looking game, and it's great to have it on PS5 now. All right, let's move on to some Gamescom and Gamescom adjacent announcements, which we're not going to go over all of them, but some of the ones that do stand out, like this one, we absolutely have to mention, which is Bubsy 4D being announced during the Gamescom ONL pre-show. It was the first announcement, and Bubsy 4D from Atari and developer Fabraz is real. If you remember back in 2023, Atari had acquired the rights to Bubsy, and they were actually quite open about wanting pitches for a new Bubsy entry in the franchise, and so here we are, 2025, a brand new 3D Bubsy game after nearly 30-something years, which is incredible because if you are a longtime PlayStation OG, then you do remember Bubsy 3D on PS1 from Ben's Studio, mind you. That was their first PlayStation game actually back in 96 or something like that, but that game is infamously known for being one of the worst games ever, or at least one of the worst 3D games ever, and that's always such a cool thing to look back on that game because, between the PS1, the Dreamcast on 64, and all these studios transitioning to 3D games, and there was really no rule set as far as how to make a 3D game and make a 3D platformer. I always think back to how Crash Bandicoot was initially seen as the Sonic's ass game because that was a novel concept at the time of seeing behind the character the entire way that you're playing the game, right? It was such a very rough cycle of games, and it's some landed beautifully, like your Crash Bandicoot, your Mario 64, and some just did not really know how to make a 3D environment and plane and make the controls feel good and camera controls, and so Bubsy's one of those games, right? And so it's actually kind of neat to see Bubsy come back all these years later. It'll be on PS4, PS5, and I'm not gonna lie, this thing looks cool. Maybe it's still terrible, but you would think they've maybe sort of come around to the idea of realizing what a 3D platformer should be. It's a different studio. It's all these years later. So that was a really goofy but fun announcement to see to kick off Gamescom. Now, as for the rest of Gamescom Opening Night Live, it was about 2 hours long, so 2.5 with the pre-show, but for the main show, we'll do what we normally do here, and that's going over every sort of PS4, PS5 relevant announcement, so it's not everything, but we should mention that the show did kick off with Call of Duty Black Ops 7 getting a release date for November 14th, so if you're into Call of Duty, there you go. It's about a month away from Battlefield 6 as well. Lords of the Fallen 2 was announced, coming next year, 2026. Sekiro No Defeat, so a Sekiro Shadows Die Twice anime was announced. Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight was announced for 2026. That is an open-world Batman game that has all these nods, references, and scenes from various Batman media. And then Monster Hunter Wilds Cross Final Fantasy XIV online collab was announced for late September. There was a new trailer for Onimusha Way of the Sword. That game is looking very good, very playable, very modern Onimusha, I guess would be the best way to put that. Season 2 trailer for the Fallout Amazon series was shown off. That premieres December 17th. Then Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the Order of Giants expansion is coming September 4th on all platforms and also coming to Switch 2. John Carpenter's Toxic Commando gets a new trailer coming early 2026. That actually does look quite good. NTE, Neverness to Everness, got a new trailer. This is another PS5 console exclusive gacha game, and as we all know, PS5 has been the console home for a lot of these gacha games, so you've got another one on the way as well. The rhythm game Unbeatable got a November 6th release date. This game does look very stylish and jazzy. There's a new trailer for Silent Hill F featuring the English voice cast. That still looks fantastic. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 finally has an October 21st release, and I think the game is indeed actually going to come out this time. Age of Empires 4 was announced for PS5 coming November 4th, so another Xbox Game Studios title coming over. And then Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 Legacy of the Forge content is coming September 9th. Cult of the Lamb is getting a big paid expansion in early 2026. Ghost of Yōtei got a new story trailer and confirmed the Legends mode as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Resident Evil Requiem got a new trailer as well. Just a little bit of gameplay, and there's some previews going out as well, so there's already been some hands-on with that game out there. And then towards the end, the one more thing announcement was Game Science announcing Black Myth Zhuangque. So great to see that. I mean, it's only been a year after Black Myth Wukong, and this was clearly a cinematic trailer, so they probably don't really have a whole lot to show, but they're simply showing their commitment to the Black Myth series after what was a very successful entry. So that was definitely neat to see. And arguably, some of these Chinese studios have been getting these games out in a slightly faster turnaround time compared to their big AAA Western counterparts, so maybe they're not going to be too far away from getting that game out the door. But otherwise, Gamescom was, it was all right. Like, I think you all know where I stand on this. I just like seeing game live streams, period. So, even when they're mid or terrible to some people, I can kind of find some value out of these things. But in that situation, yeah, the show wasn't incredible. I mean, you're going to have situations where, based on development timelines and partners that are ready to show trailers, it's going to be a fairly light show in some scenarios. I think this was arguably one of them. I think the thing that really does stand out to me outside of and I get that I'm not really a Resident Evil fan, so for that, a lot of folks were very happy to see more Requiem, and now there's some previews out there, but unironically, I thought Lego Batman looked incredible. I mean, Lego is one of those things where, for me, it's always a property type of thing, because there's so many Lego games that have been released over the years, and depending on the property, it's I could have a lot of fun with those games. And so Batman, I'm more partial to Batman. So I see this open world, there's, all these different cool nods and references to Batman history and different Batman media. So I'm like, this game actually looks really good. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that, so that might have been the game that really did stand out to me. But otherwise, Yōtei obviously looks good, but that's the thing that we could probably segue to right away, which is that, yes, it was confirmed that Ghost of Yōtei is going to get its Legends mode as well. So over on the PlayStation blog, they did outline a little bit more about this. So the free DLC is coming in 2026. It is going to offer 2-player story missions and 4-player survival matches, and you'll play as one of the 4 character classes in the game, trying to defeat demonic giant versions of the Yōtei 6, because the Legends version, or the Legends multiplayer mode from Tsushima, and now here does have a supernatural element that is very much on display, so they're leaning more into that for Yōtei as well. And it's cool that, before the game even came out, they are outlining that Legends is still going to be a thing, because that was not the case for Tsushima when it kind of came out of nowhere after the game was already released at that point. And there was definitely some rhetoric around the possibility of Sucker Punch not even doing multiplayer again, but I think that was pretty clear that they were still going to do a Legends 2.0 style thing, and now you have this. Now, they do confirm it's free DLC for Yōtei owners, so they're not unbundling it or announcing the unbundle in the here and now. You would think that probably will happen at some point, but it is still cool to see Legends is coming back, especially in this environment where, if it is anything like the previous Legends, this is going to be a more smaller, modest scope multiplayer component to a base game, which is very reminiscent of the PS3 360 days. I think arguably that's something we don't really get a whole lot of nowadays, so it might actually be very refreshing to have that as a free content update later for the game in 2026. Now, the other very big Gamescom adjacent announcement was Hollow Knight Silksong finally getting a confirmed release date of September 4th, just 2 weeks away, under 2 weeks away. So that, after years of fans waiting, Team Cherry not saying much of anything or giving very small minor updates here and there, all these trade shows and events and Nintendo Directs coming and going with no Silksong update, It seems like the finish line is finally there and fans can have their time with this game they are so deeply anticipating. Which I am too. It's funny though how this game was just, it started to mount into this like insurmountable thing to where like it was half joking and half not, because people do genuinely really love the game, so they want to see that sequel finally come out. So it's cool to have it finally be within our reach in just under 2 weeks. That is so cool to see. Although, and I've already seen some propose this idea, and I'm sure it will happen, but this like conversation surrounding it probably being like a lot of detractors of saying, oh, the first game maybe wasn't all that, this game doesn't deserve all this attention and this press and whatnot, which that alone is going to be not quite an issue, but it's going to be something different with this game, and that the press is not going to get early access to this game, so Kickstarter backers are getting the game first, which is a very pragmatic choice from Team Cherry to do, obviously, but you're not going to see any sort of early critical reception initially. It's going to be in the hands of everybody, and I'm sure that conversation is going to be quite fun. It seems like a lot of critically acclaimed sequels, or games that are getting a sequel to a critically acclaimed game, they oftentimes go through this cycle of, oh, the last game wasn't that good, or this game isn't hitting quite like the first game was when it was an established thing already, and it's, you know, you're kind of walking into something that feels very safe and samey. So I don't know, it's just one of those things. We seem to find this cycle over and over and over again, and I'm sure Silksong might run into that as well. Next up, we have the very expected rumor of a possible PlayStation State of Play or a showcase coming next month in September, which September historically has been a month that Sony almost always does like to do a State of Play or a showcase, usually a State of Play. And so we are once again hearing from Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb during a recent Game Mess Mornings episode where he said, and I quote here, "I'll point out what I've heard, and this one I feel comfortable saying, yeah, you can go write the headlines about this if you want. Sony's planning a State of Play or maybe a PS showcase, but probably a State of Play for the end of September or before the end of September. So we're going to get updates from Sony here pretty soon." Which that alone is something where, like, I know people like to give Jeff Grubb a lot of business, but this is typically the one thing as far as like events and live streams, direct State of Plays. He's been very reliable for those in particular, but this is also something where, again, historically Sony really likes doing these in September. So that's neither here nor there, but it is something where we can at least have the conversation of, hey, Sony is going to be holding a live stream fairly soon, and there are indeed still a lot of things that we could hear from SIE themselves. So, I mean, PlayStation does have a handful of things, right? We need that Saros gameplay, and you know, I am dying to see Saros gameplay. But we need to see that. Maybe Marvel's Wolverine will have a more proper reveal now that Insomniac is probably much further along in that game. Maybe something for Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, but I would think that might be something more for the Game Awards if they're going to show more of that game. There's the Horizon multiplayer game, which needs a formal reveal, which I thought that game was going to get a reveal a long time ago, but we're not sure what the condition is of that game after years of development and how picky and stringent Sony has now gotten with their live service output. So I'm not sure what kind of milestone that game needs to hit now to have that reveal. There's the rumored 2.5D God of War Metroidvania game that is also maybe unlikely to be shown just yet, because I would think if that game's going to ship next year, unless it's like early next year, it's probably the kind of game where it's going to get announced and then shipped within a very small window. There's also the not a new IP, but feels like one game from Santa Monica. That could be a very big one more thing towards the end of the live stream announcement. Marvel Tokon character reveals, I think, are all but like a given nowadays when we're talking about any sort of upcoming PlayStation live stream. There's games from the India Hero and Mina Hero projects we could see. There's a lot of, focused SIE things we could see alongside the expected time slots for third-party publishing partners as well. So with that in mind, that's just the quick rundown, but yeah, we're probably a month away from SIE finally doing some more talking, which nowadays people really are clamoring for, and it's fair because it takes a long time for games to get made and shown off nowadays. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or X, and if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. Follow the link down below or scan the QR code, enter the Gleam giveaway, and supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. those are all the stories that I wanted to talk about with you all from this past week, and our Tuesday video was a conversation topic around the idea of, has PlayStation lost their way? That was initially kicked off from comments from Michael Pachter at Wedbush Securities, and so he did a Pachter Factor episode, said a few things that, were valid, but also I disagree with, so it was more of a conversation topic, so you can go check that out. And then we should have, because I didn't film it just yet, or rather, we didn't live stream it just yet, but there should be a new Click R3 episode that we did last night, so that was live, but now it should be available on the Spawncast Network channel, and that is pretty much it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.